You don't believe in the Force, do you?
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field controls my destiny. It's all a lot of simple tricks and nonsense.
Hey everyone, and depending on what time you're watching this video, good morning, afternoon, and evening to you all. For those of you who don't live under a rock, you've probably heard of a certain epic saga of movies that has influenced both Eastern and Western culture over the past 4 decades and has developed a rather fanatical following. That's right, today we're going to talk about Star Wars. But rather than talk about the usual points that a cinematographer will drool over, such as the realistic film sets, the intricate costume design, or the super awesome action sequences, I've decided to take a look at the deeper story that makes up Star Wars and why this blockbuster movie holds so much meaning in our lives. Now, I should warn you, I am by no means a Star Wars expert. I've never attended a class on Star Wars philosophy, never wrote a paper about Star Wars, never participated in a Star Wars comic convention, and I certainly didn't write any part of the films either. So you can ask, well, what do you know about Star Wars? Well, the only thing I can tell you is that I have seen all 9 films, some of which I have seen repeatedly almost every year. So the beauty of this video is that you're allowed to sit in your seat and totally disagree with everything I have to say, because all I have is a mere opinion, and the beauty of opinions is you're allowed to disagree with them. Now, there are many points that can be covered when it comes to faith in Star Wars, so to simplify things, I will divide this video into 3 parts. The first is the Force, the second is good versus evil, and the third is family. As you can imagine, I will be talking about big plot points here, so if you haven't seen the movies yet and you really don't want me to spoil the surprises, you should probably leave now. So, let's begin with Chapter 1, The Force. Now, if you were to look at the Force objectively, without having watched any of the movies in their entirety, what you would see are a bunch of men in bathrobes levitating objects in midair while hypnotizing soldiers to repeat whatever they say. And you would probably think, hey, that Force thing, that's a pretty cool magic trick, brah. However, as the wise Obi-Wan Kenobi tells us,
the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
So the Force is supposed to be an energy field, something that is present all around us in each living thing. It's not a magic trick, it's simply natural. I guess in a sense we could look at the Force the same way Hindus look at chakras, which are energy points located within our body that connect us to both the spiritual and physical realm. So this Force that Star Wars speaks of is not technically a special power that is only exclusive to certain people like mutants or superheroes. It's actually something that we can all attain if we develop our sensitivity to it. Further, as the wise Yoda tells us in episode 5,
and where you should not. For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you, here. Between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
So I think we've all got the picture now, right? The Force is a powerful energy field. It's not a magic trick, and it surrounds all of us, whether we like it or not. Now, here's another cool thing about the Force that I would like to point out. As Yoda also mentions,
through the Force, things you will see, other places, the future, the past, old friends long gone.
Now, what does this sound like to you, to be able to travel to other places at different points in time in the blink of an eye? What it sounds like to me is that being in tune with the Force allows you to transcend your own physical body, to escape and travel through the spiritual realm, where you can get a glimpse of the future or perhaps relive a memory from the past, or even better yet, visit old friends who had passed away long ago. When we watch Star Wars, we see examples of this Force power like when Anakin dreams of his wife's foreshadowing death, or when Luke communicates with the ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi, because it's their sensitivity to the Force that allows them to do this. See, this is what makes Star Wars a truly spiritual movie, because as you can see here, the most powerful characters are in fact the most religious, or most spiritual, of all the other characters. Take for example this scene in the first movie. Darth Vader tells his Imperial officers,
"Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force."
To which one of the commanders replies,
"Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes, or given you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort."
To to which Darth Vader responds with his infamous chokehold, the first glimpse the audience sees in relation to the power of the Force. And this is followed by one of his most famous lines.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
So you see, Darth Vader may be evil, but he is one faithful believer. Which brings me to another point about the Force. Remember that one scene I was talking about earlier when Yoda was lecturing Luke about the awesomeness of the Force, how it flows through all of us no matter how small or insignificant? What do you think Luke's response to that was? Do you think he became determined and inspired, suddenly awake to the full powers of the Force, feeling like he could take on the whole Empire himself? Well, no. In fact, Luke stared at Yoda in disbelief, sighed and walked away, saying,
"You want the impossible."
It was as if he had given up on the Force entirely, just because it sounded too unreal. Then Yoda has this moment, where you can tell he's sad and beaten, ashamed that his people had already given up on the Force just because it sounded too big and powerful. We see Yoda take a deep breath as if to say, well, if I can't teach him, then I guess I'll just have to show him. Next thing we know, Yoda lifts his hand and slowly pulls Luke's ship out of the swamp, using only his Force telekinesis, to which Luke reacts with jaw-dropping awe. He rushes over to Yoda and says,
I don't believe it.
To which Yoda takes another deep breath, choosing his words wisely, and replies,
That is why you fail.
So you see, in order for us to even harness the power of the Force, we first need to believe in it. We need to believe in its existence, and we need to believe in its ability. Again, you can't help but see the connection that Star Wars is making with religion and spirituality. The power of your faith and your spirit can be so strong, but the only way that you can harness that power is by first believing in it. That's why it takes Luke and Rey so long to start using any Force power, because they didn't believe in the Force until somebody came by and told them about it. In the case of Luke, it was Obi-Wan who taught him about the Force, and in the case of Rey, it was Han Solo. That's why you don't see them using the Force at the age of 5, because they first had to believe in the very idea of the Force, even if for just a bit. As many fans of Star Wars will point out, one of the main themes in these movies is that no matter how advanced or powerful technology will become, it will never triumph over people's faith. People who worship technology are like the Empire. They surrender to this technology and in some ways become weak. They rely on artificial products to do all the thinking and working for them, rather than embracing the limitless energy that's all around us and has been all around us since the beginning of time. That is why being in tune with the Force is like being in tune with God. Like the monks who meditate all day to find truth, wisdom, and energy, being in tune with the Force will give you similar, if not more powerful, abilities. It could explain why the Jedi dress in the same robes as monks, and why some of them, like Yoda, end up living for 800 years, because of their strong connection with the Force. But then again, some of you may be asking, well, if being in tune with the Force is like being in tune with God, then why are there evil people like Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine? They're quite strong with the Force, even more so than some of the other Jedi. Yet, they're evil. So does being in tune with God also mean that you can become evil? Now, before we start hitting the panic button and reassessing God's ethics, I think this would be a perfect time to transition into the second chapter about Star Wars, which I like to call Good versus Evil. As all of you know, there is a light and a dark side when it comes to the Force, and it seems to distinguish those who are evil from those who are good. When we grind it down to the nuts and bolts of it all, what distinguishes the light side from the dark are really just emotions. Those who turn to the dark side rely on dark emotions such as fear, anger, greed, jealousy, hatred, and aggression. They are labeled as Siths, and are known to rely on their passion for their power. Those who practice the light, on the other hand, rely on calmer emotions such as compassion, selflessness, mercy, benevolence, and patience. They are labeled as Jedis, known to use their power only for knowledge and defense, never for attack. And so one might be quick to say that everything that belongs to the dark side is evil, and everything that belongs to the light side is good. Now, the movies do a pretty obvious job of portraying this, as all the villains are even dressed in black to further enunciate their dark side behavior. And should it be a surprise that all the heroes that you're rooting for are dressed oppositely in white? The villains that we love to hate seem embezzled in their dark emotions, feeding on anger and aggression to meet their objectives, while the heroes are the only ones who seem to practice compassion and calmness, often for a cause greater than themselves. So the movies send a powerful message to us, in that it visually illustrates what is good and what is evil before our very eyes. If your leader is one who practices aggressive tactics, often preying upon the fear and anger of his people, then you should know that your leader is evil. But conversely, if your leader preaches compassion and benevolence above all else, practicing patience at the mercy of those less fortunate, then you would say that your leader is good. So now we all know what is good and what is evil, right? Black robes and aggression are bad, white robes and compassion are good. Well, before you rush to any conclusions, here's something else you should know. Before the Empire ruled the galaxy, there was another power that presided over, and that was the Jedi Council, the good guys. Yes, there was a time in the universe when the good guys were in charge. However, putting the good guys in charge didn't exactly make everyone happy. It wasn't just the villains who were unhappy with the Jedi Council, even some of our heroes were unhappy with their rule. What the prequels illustrate for us is the exchange in the balance of power from our good Jedi Council to the evil Sith Lords. But how did this all happen? Why were people unhappy with the Jedi Council, the supposed good people of the light side? Here is where we are taught a valuable lesson, a shift in our paradigm of thinking. Just because something comes from the light side does not always make it good, and conversely, if something comes from the dark side, it does not automatically make it evil. If we look at something like calmness, we immediately think that it is good. We appreciate people who are calm because they don't scare us as much as angry people. Thus, we like to think that calm people are generally good people. But aren't there cases where being too calm can actually be destructive? Like maybe the bank tells you that you're thousands of dollars in debt and you have a wife and children to take care of, but rather than being anxious about the situation, you just shrug off the news like it doesn't matter. Then when the bank comes around and takes your house and you're living on the streets with no family anymore, you might regret being so calm. You might have wished you were a bit more aggressive. And the same argument can be made of where you come from. For example, if a priest were to come up to you and ask you to take your clothes off, would you consider that a good thing? Or if a prisoner were to come up to you and tell you you must love others more than yourself, would you disagree with him? See, just because someone like a priest comes from someplace good does not always mean that he is right. And conversely, just because someone comes from someplace bad, like a prison, does not always mean that that person is wrong. And so this is the lesson with Star Wars. The dark side is not necessarily evil, and the light side is not necessarily good. If we are in excess of one or the other, it can lead to destruction. Therefore, we need to find a balance. Now, the balance that we seek may not necessarily be 50-50 either. If you knew a person who was angry and aggressive 50% of the time, and only 50% of the other time was actually calm and benevolent, you would probably still label that person as dark and destructive. In my opinion, the right balance might be something like 90-10, or even 95-5. You really don't need to be angry, fearful, or aggressive that much to get your point across. It's important to be compassionate and benevolent most of the time, but under certain circumstances, you might be required to express those aggressive emotions to do the right thing. Suppressing any type of emotion is not necessarily considered healthy, but neither is overdosing on it. There's a saying that goes, our true focus does not lie in serenity or rage, but in fact somewhere in between. And just because it comes from X-Men does not mean I can't put it in a video about Star Wars. Now, let's turn our attention back to the Wookiees and droids again. There are some qualities from the dark side that are extremely beneficial. For example, it was because of their aggression and ambitiousness that the Empire could build such massive weaponry at such a fast rate. Like, you notice that once Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, the Empire suddenly seemed to be built overnight. Could you imagine if the Jedi had that power? Let's just say if the Jedi were a bit more like the Siths, they would have had more than just their lightsabers to rule the galaxy. And they probably would have been better able to defend their power against the evil overthrow of the Siths. But that reason alone is not why the Jedi lost their power in the galaxy. It was not their lack of technology that failed them, rather, it was their lack of heart. This might sound odd to most of you considering the Jedi are supposed to be warriors of the light, and that benevolence and compassion should be at the forefront of their actions. Let me elaborate. Like religious institutions, the Jedi have a code or theology that they live their lives by, and this code pretty much holds precedence over everything. Some things that we know in the code are celibacy, no passion, only peace, and no death, only the Force. And we can see some of those same things practiced in other religious institutions, particularly by monks. They live by this code so that they can stay aligned to the light as much as possible. However, like I mentioned before, there should be a balance in the Force when we want to do the right thing, and so because the Jedi lived so much according to the code, it ultimately led to their downfall, and this downfall began with the mishandling of their Messiah, Anakin Skywalker. According to the Jedi prophecy, they believed that one day the Chosen One would come to restore balance to the Force. They thought that this meant ultimately bringing peace to the universe, and this is probably true, but not in the way that they thought. See, the Jedi were under the impression that because they believed so much in peace, they were the only ones capable of bringing peace to the universe. But perhaps what the universe needed was a little less Jedi and a little more dark side. See, initially when the Jedi are presented with Anakin Skywalker, it's almost too obvious that this guy is a chosen one. He just has so much raw power. However, they hesitate to train him because they sense he has a little dark side. He is attached to his mother and misses her, actually afraid of what will happen to her. This is very uncharacteristic of a Jedi Knight, and is not what they would expect from the Chosen One. It's funny too though, because Anakin practices more compassion than any of the other Jedi since he cares so much for his mother, but according to the Jedi Code, a Jedi must lose all attachments to people and objects and accept their fate, for death simply means returning to the energy of the force field. So the Jedi, rather than listening to their hearts, chose to listen to the Code, and felt that the best thing to do for Anakin was to raise him like a Jedi Knight as much as possible. Rather than saving his mother and bringing her closer to him, they actually distanced the two as much as possible, trying to convince Anakin that he must let go of his attachment, or else it will lead to anger and jealousy, and a path to the dark side. And this continues throughout Anakin's training as he grows older. He grows stronger as he learns more about the light side, and even though he becomes more powerful than all the other Jedi, They refuse to grant him the title of Master, because again, they fear his dark emotions. He still has traces of anger from the loss of his mother, and this frightens the Jedi Council. Rather than exploring Anakin's potential and encouraging him to grow, they oppress him and try to protect him from the dark side to minimize the risk of him becoming evil. Like a religious institution, the Jedi Council serves to protect and guide the people towards peace, but if it tries too hard to protect the people by hiding certain truths, then it limits everyone from growth. While the evil Empire oppressed the people physically through fascist fear tactics, the Jedi oppressed people in another way, by limiting their growth and knowledge through censorship. And so this is what ultimately led to the demise of the Jedi. Anakin was shown the ways of the dark side, being promised that it could make him more powerful than ever before, even convincing him that practicing the dark side could help save the lives of those he loved most. What Anakin did not know is that there were some lies in these statements, but he didn't stop to think twice because he finally felt so free from the oppression, from the caging, that anything you told him against the Jedi probably sounded true. He embraced the dark side, but lost the light in the process. Thus he did not strike the perfect balance. And so therein lies the conflict of Star Wars. What is good and what is bad? How can we find the balance between the light and the dark? I believe the answer to these questions comes down to the third and final chapter of this video, and that is family. What makes Luke Skywalker the most unbelievable hero of all heroes in this saga is that he is the only one who really does everything he can for family without losing sight of who he is as an individual. What I mean by that is that sometimes we can say we do whatever we can for family by obeying our parents and following their every order, but in the process of doing so we don't develop our own personal identity. Luke, on the other hand, understands who he is and where he stands. From the very beginning, Luke loses his uncle and aunt at the hands of the Empire, losing the last connection he has to family. But rather than avenge the loss of his family by killing those responsible, he avenges their death by vowing to do what is right. When he comes across Obi-Wan Kenobi and learns of the Force, he immediately knows this to be true, and makes it his personal quest to become a Jedi, since the world is greatly lacking some. Along the way, he meets new friends, Han Solo and Princess Leia, who become his new family as he grows a tight personal bond with them through their adventures. What comes to a great shock in the saga is at the swamps of Dagobah, where Luke is warned by Yoda that if he follows his instincts and tries to save his friends without proper training, then he'll risk losing his own life. Although Luke knows Yoda to be a great Jedi and one of the wisest in the world, he does not listen to him and instead chooses to listen to his heart and take the risk for the sake of his friends. While Yoda tries to do what's best for Luke and the fate of the galaxy by being overprotective and strict to the Jedi Code, it seems that Luke ends up making the right decision in the end. When Luke initially leaves Dagobah, Yoda warns him not to go, telling him he is not ready. But yet, when Luke returns with a desire for more training, Yoda lies in his bed and peacefully assures Luke that he is in fact ready, and that there is nothing more he needs to learn. Now, while some might suspect that Yoda just said this because he's old, tired, and about to die, I like to think that this was the moment Yoda realized he was wrong, admitting that maybe Luke knows more about the true nature of the Force and is better equipped to use it for the right reasons. When we first found out that Darth Vader was Luke's father, we were all like, no, shit, he's lying, that's impossible. And then when we realized he wasn't lying, we were all like, oh shit, Luke's gonna have to kill his own father to save the universe. Damn, that sucks to be him. I mean, let's face it, if we were to look at this from a logical point of view, it was clear that if the Resistance wanted any chance to defeat the Empire, their best bet would be to kill Darth Vader, the most powerful man in the universe. And so from a good versus evil point of view, this puts Luke in a pretty clear position, right? If he wants to bring victory to good and defeat evil, all he needs to do is kill his own father. Sacrifice your family for the sake of the universe. But somehow, Luke goes beyond our expectations and does the truly impossible. For those that are not familiar with the concept of the three great blessings, there is a belief that in order to live a purposeful life, the key is to attain the three great blessings, and to do it in numerical order. The first blessing is individual perfection, the second is family perfection, and the third is universal perfection. That means that if you want to take care of the universe, you first need to learn how to take care of your family. And before you can take care of your family, you need to learn how to take care of yourself. So how does this tie in with Star Wars? Well, this might be a bit of a stretch, but maybe George Lucas knew that a hero shouldn't try to save the universe without making the effort to save his own family first. Like a mathematician who can solve relativity equations but can't add 2 plus 2, or a doctor who can perform open heart surgery but can't treat his daughter from a common cold, a perfect hero is not truly perfect if he ignores the basics of what makes a good human being, and that includes loving your family. Many times when we try to do the right thing, we first ask what is good and what is evil, and oftentimes we think about the sacrifices a person must make for the greater good. We see time and time again the people who revolutionized the world often did so at the expense of their family, and because we are so ingrained with this image, it becomes normal for us to think that in order to succeed, we must sacrifice the ones we love. But what worth is our sacrifice if we had no intention of holding on to our family in the first place? If we don't value our family as the most important thing in the world, then does our sacrifice for the greater good really mean anything? Personally, I think that the key to saving the world is not through sacrificing your family, but instead by sacrificing your selfishness. And is loving your family selfish? I don't think so. It can be one of the most difficult things we experience as human beings, to be able to get along with our brothers and sisters and communicate with our parents. Family can be a great opportunity to learn how to cooperate with others and love them even under the craziest of circumstances. And that's really the key to everything. Love. Love is what makes a family. Love is the answer between good and evil. Love is the key to finding balance in the Force. Love is a precious thing. It can seem fragile and fleeting in some instances, but when you get it right, it feels stronger than any other force in the universe. If we are aggressive and try to conquer love too soon, we fall into the inevitable trap of the dark side, leading to pain and suffering. That's why we practice the light side of patience, to understand that love is a long-term process that requires great care and attention to make it work. But if we are too patient or too stagnant, then we lose sight of the things that truly matter and forget why we were waiting in the first place. And there might be no better example of this than in The Last Jedi when Rose stops Finn from sacrificing himself at the hands of the First Order. While Finn's sacrifice would have prevented the First Order from penetrating the Rebellion's fortress, Rose reminds all of us in perhaps the cheesiest line ever,
"That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love."
So be careful the next time you think you've got it all figured out. When you think you know the difference between right and wrong, or who is your friend and who is your enemy. Every individual holds an important value in this universe, and every day we as individuals face choices that define who we are and what we become. The universe is always in conflict because every person is conflicted within him or herself, and for that, Star Wars will always live on, in both the fictional and real world. So let's learn something from our heroes in both the good and bad times, and realize that we are all conflicted beings striving to find the right balance within ourselves. The questions will keep coming, but maybe, just maybe, we can find some answers in both our faith and Star Wars.